Hey, welcome to my channel. Hope everything's going well. Today we're in the garage because I'm going to be looking at putting in a Rekluse Autoclutch into the BMW G310R. If you ride the BMW G310R or the G310GS, you've noticed that the clutch is a bit tricky. It has a small friction zone and the bike stalls pretty easy compared to other bikes of this size. So one of the ways to take care of that is to install the Rekluse Autoclutch. And if you're not familiar with the Autoclutch, what that does is it allows you to let the clutch out and then it will engage at a certain RPM, so you don't have to worry about stalling it. And the reason I'm doing this is the person who rides this bike is still learning to ride, and I thought this would be a great way to make it a little bit easier so there isn't as much stress about stalling the bike at stoplights, stop signs, just getting going, and so that the person can concentrate a little bit more on just the riding aspect of it. So in today's video I'm going to talk a little bit more about the clutch as we get going and a few tips and things that I learn as we go. I'm not going to do a full comprehensive installation of this. I think the instructions that are provided by Rekluse are really good, and I'm not a certified mechanic, so I don't want anyone following my instructions to the T and have anything go wrong. So I'll just show a few things as we go, and then after I get the clutch installed and go through the setup procedure, and then give you my impressions of how this bike feels after getting the clutch installed. So stick around and we'll talk about installing this clutch, some of the things that I see as we go, the benefits of it, and testing it out, getting it broken and going from there. Alright, one quick thing that I forgot to do is that the clutch pack here, the friction plates and also the auto clutch, they need to soak in oil for 5 minutes before installation. What I wanted to do, but I have already forgotten, was to put oil on these at the beginning of the job, and that way I know that they've been soaked in there and that everything will be well lubricated. So if you're going to do this job, make this like the first thing you do even before you drain the oil out of the engine, and then that way you know when it's time to install these that they're well soaked and lubricated. Okay, water pump is out, and now it's time to take off the case. Alright, case cover is off. What's left to do is pull the clutch cover off and then pull all the pads out and start working on doing the installation per Rekluse's instructions. A couple of notes. When you pull the clutch cover off, there's a couple of pins that hold the timing chain tensioners in place. If those pins come out with the clutch cover, make sure you pull those out and get those put in right away to keep the tensioners from sliding down. I had one of the tensioners slide down on one of the sides, and in order to get it back out, you have to pull out the hydraulic tensioner, which I'll show you where it's at. I think Matt at Motorworks does a lot of work on the G310s, and that's where I learned a lot about how to work on these. I'd recommend going there. He did a tutorial on valve adjustments, which goes through how to pull out the hydraulic tensioner. When you receive the Rekluse clutch pack, make sure that you keep the friction plates and the clutch plates all in the order that you received them. They are not the same size. From what I can tell, they are packaged in the order they need to be installed. So keep those in the same order, and that way when you add the oil to them, you get them lubricated and you're ready to put them in the clutch basket. They're already in the order. You just switch between friction plate and clutch plate and then it'll go right in, no problems. In the current situation with factory shutdown in India, it's going to be really hard to get a gasket for these bikes. Maybe your local dealership has one. I was having difficulty finding one. This is a really important note. The oil pump, the clearance between the oil pump and the case is really, really close. So it requires that fiber gasket to provide the appropriate clearance. If you don't have that in there and you try to use just Permatex or gasket maker, when the metal touches metal, when it squeezes together to seal it, it's not going to have a proper clearance, and then the oil pump is actually going to rub on the case, preventing the engine from turning over. So what I had to do, because the gasket came apart when I pulled the case off, was I saved that part of the gasket that went around the oil pump, put that on, and then use the Permatex to seal up the rest of the case. No oil leak, just to know that you can't just use Permatex. You have to have that little bit of clearance, at least on this bike, between the oil pump and the case. The other thing that I noticed was the barrel adjustment is out a really long way in order to get it adjusted right. I was not expecting it to have to go that far. The free play adjustment is a little tricky to get figured out. I found the hand method to be better than trying to use the rubber band. You just put a little bit of tension on it when you rev it, you'll feel it move, and that was the easiest thing to do. And then I also used the bike, making sure that when it was in first gear it would sit idling with the clutch out, knowing that the auto clutch is disengaging everything. As long as it did that, it felt fine to me, and I was able to start, as you'll see, without having a hand on the clutch from a stop going. So it seemed to be working great. It's very, very forgiving. Going up hills, you can just ease up it, where before it was pretty easy to stall this bike. I think it makes the bike a lot more easier to ride. When I was riding around the block, I tend to kind of half clutch things, and I noticed with this, shifting up is fine, but when shifting down, it didn't want to go down, so I had to pull the clutch in all the way to get it to downshift. Not a big deal. It's just a little bit different feel to it with the auto clutch. I like the way it feels, and I was just around the block a couple of times. More time on this clutch will certainly make it easier to know and learn and get used to how it feels. If you have any questions about the install of the Rekluse clutch or anything to do with the clutch, I may be able to answer those for you. Leave those in the comments below, and I'll get back to you. And again, the reason I didn't show a lot of the things that I did, because I'm not a certified mechanic. I don't want anybody going and doing work on their bike, following my instructions, just in case something is confusing or isn't straightforward. I think if you have a little bit of mechanical capability, if you've done clutches before, it's pretty straightforward. take the clutch cover off, pull the clutch pack out, put the new clutch pack in, make sure you put it in order, and then seal everything up. It's basically a take apart, put back together. There's not a lot of things to figure out other than the free play. So if you are riding a BMW G310R or GS, I hope you found this useful, and if you've had issues with the clutch and want something a little bit different, it's a little bit more forgiving, and yeah, it makes it just a little bit more fun to ride. Hopefully this video did that for you. Thanks for watching, and I will see you out there. Out there, they can explain how things work and how things go together.